be here again as we continue this platform, continue to try to have these conversations that we believe are very pressing and relevant to the body of Christ that don't always necessarily get covered in the preaching setting.
As you can see, it's only two amigos here today. We're missing our third amigo, Pastor Adams. Unfortunately, Pastor Adams had to tend to some bereavement. His mother passed away last week, and so he's out on the East Coast in Maryland taking care of that with the family. So our prayers and thoughts go out to him, and please pray for him as well.
Absolutely.
But in his absence,
Yeah.
we have still an exciting show for you today. We have some very special guests to supplement our topic today, blended families. And we're going to welcome those special guests to the stage. Come on up. All right, these are no strangers, but I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting to my left. Jalen?
Well, you said it, but but I'm Jalen. I am Pastor John's son, second in line. I played the drums and the percussion here at New Covenant Church.
Praise God. And the queen of this house.
Hi, I'm Rena Thompson. I'm the wife of Senior Pastor John Thompson.
Last but not least.
I'm Trey. I am Pastor John Thompson's stepson, actually. I happy to be here. Yeah, happy to be here.
So, as you can see, I have a very exciting cast. I'm so excited about this cast. And today we're talking about blended families. And so, Pastor and John and I, we've been talking about, even with Pastor Adams, for several weeks, and in anticipation for this day. And just to talk about the three different perspectives that we initially thought for this particular show, is that the dynamics of the blended family in terms of marriage, right? Which is, and divorce,
Sure.
which is how, Pastor Adams, his perspective was on this show. Me, I am was a foster child growing up. And so essentially I came into a family with two parents, two non-biological parents that had other foster children in the home as well.
Absolutely.
So we were all blended from all over the place.
Everybody had that experience.
And this perspective that we're going to talk about today, and a little bit more focus in the absence of Pastor Adam, is really the blended family where there's pre-children or children already with each of the spouses prior to coming into the relationship as a marriage and forming a blended family.
Absolutely.
So what we always do is we try to keep it just so, the charisma going on. We don't want to have super scripted. We have questions to guide the conversation to make sure that we're on topic and that you're getting the most out of it. But definitely don't forget to comment. Don't forget to, to like this if it's something that you're enjoying. At the same time, leave comments. We want to know. We want to know that we're actually putting together something that is going to benefit the culture. Pastor John, you ran some stats down about, blended families earlier in service. You want to talk to us about that?
As a matter of fact, just the one, which is the major stat, is that of the family growth models in America right now, family growth models meaning the nuclear family, which is the traditional family between a husband and a wife and their biological children. Then you've got a step family, obviously, where there is a non-biological family member that is included in the family in some way, shape, or form. And then you've got grandparent-led families and all of those kinds of things. The blended family is the model of family that is growing the fastest in America. Now, it makes perfect sense when you think about that, though, because the divorce rate in America is over 50%. And so with a divorce rate over 50% and then remarriage is taking place, well, generally speaking, when you're marrying someone, you're already going to be, for the most part, marrying someone that has children with them already. There's very few occasions where you're going to find someone to marry first time around without children, and then second time around, it gets even less.
Very interesting point. So therefore, thus we're here today to talk about blended families. And may I say that you have done a tremendous job as a blended family. And the Bible says that you can tell a tree by the fruit that it bears.
That's good.
And so from my observation, you've done a tremendous job. The first question that we had was, what is a blended family?
Yeah.
Right. And so essentially, and we've kind of given three different models, and there's more.
There's more. Right. We won't be able to cover count them
So
all.
non-biological, essentially siblings, in terms of is what I think we deem the blended family is, or one aspect of the blended family. And then we went on to talk about what are some of the things to make a blended what are some of the things to consider for spouses to approach coming together as a blended family.
Oh, wow. There are so many. There are so many. When we got together as a blended family, you know, we were young, so we really didn't know a whole lot about anything. You know, there's a general thought process that, you know, people think that when they see the end of something, they think that the road to get there was a straight road.
Right.
Ours was not. And so we came, you know, it wasn't the Brady Bunch. You know, even though she had one and I had one, it did not come together easily. And so part of there are several things that parents have to be cognizant of when they're bringing a family together. One is obviously the chemistry of the family.
Right. Right.
You know, are there any preconceived issues or pre-existing conditions that will lend themselves to a blended family not working? You know, is this one a fighter? Is that one peaceful? Is, you know, there are issues with exes, the child's biological parent, that have to be considered as well. And how that's going to work out, because now if he or she is actively engaged, then what is the role of the new step parent going to be? These are the kinds of questions and things that have to be addressed, you know, when you go through that whole process. Discipline, you know, did he come from a home where his parents spanked him or whipped him, and she came from a home where they did time out and you know, took things away? You know, those things make a difference in terms of how this new couple is going to get together and agree upon raising the children.
You raise a lot of good points, but I don't really see much difference than a biological family in terms of making sure you have those conversations when you get together, right?
I agree. The only difference is that they're in a step. I'm going to use the word step. In a blended family format, some of those structures were put in place before the new party arrived. So you're coming in, and then because of biological family is different, you know, there is the added pressure of saying, you're not my,
Right.
not my child, you know, not my son, not my daughter, not my mother, not my father. So there's that added pressure, whereas if the children are biologically both of yours, then that's a hurdle that doesn't have to be jumped. There is no you're not mine.
Right.
Now, she and I still may disagree about some things, and we may need to work that out, but you don't get to get in the middle of that and play one end against the middle, you know, because you're out.
That's pretty critical, and so I love what you said, that because essentially you said something earlier about defining expectations, you know, the roles. As a stepfather, am I going to be the disciplinarian with your child?
Right.
And have you accepted that particular role for me? Or does he already have a biological father that has certain discipline standards in place that I need to adhere to? And so these are some of the things that are not always discussed but should be discussed.
Absolutely.
And it creates a more of a conducive environment to bonding together, you know,
Sure.
quicker.
And part of the process as well is that, you know, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So you don't know what to ask.
Right.
You don't know what to look for. You don't know what the pitfalls may be. Oh, we got along well when we were dating. Yeah, but you weren't in charge then. You know, the other person could always get up and leave, or they weren't accountable to you then. You didn't have to work together. You chose to work together then. But now that you're in a marriage situation where now that was separated is now coming together to form one, it's a completely different dynamic.
Tell me about their responsibility. I mean, obviously you take on the responsibility of marrying a wife, and all that she is
Sure.
yours, right?
Sure.
Or becomes your responsibility as
Sure.
well. But talk to me about that process of becoming a father to a child that you didn't bring into this world.
That's a daunting process. Well, because first of all, there's a level of uncertainty, you know, with regards to what the role of the biological parent is going to be, right? If that parent is going to be actively engaged, then they're going to set the terms for how far you can go with things. You know what I mean?
Right.
If they're not engaged, then the mother still sets the terms for how you're going to go, and then of course, lastly, the child sets the terms. So you have to work through all of that. The best thing to do is to try to find common ground, though, with the child. so that you guys can begin the process of developing your own relationship. Now, you mentioned this a moment ago, when you marry a woman, you marry all that she is. And so whether you plan to assume responsibility for the child's parentage or not, it's yours, you know, and you have to comport yourself accordingly. And really, even though you're in the unenviable position of being like, you know, the third guy on the date, right? You know, the third wheel, even though you're in that position, you still can't conduct yourself as though you're in that position as it relates to your involvement. Okay? You're in a lesser position by virtue of your authority, by virtue of the voice that you have, but you're in the same position as the biological parents as it relates to responsibility.
In our production meeting, we talked about having patience in
Sure.
terms of allowing the child to get acclimated to the situation, as parents are getting acclimated to the situation. I'm going to turn this over to Rena on this side. You know, what are some of those things in terms of, in regards to having patience, whether it's you're the step parent or you're the biological parent? What would you advise blended families in terms of which way they should go in terms of having patience?
Patience. I think that it's not a clear-cut timetable with it. I think it's one of those things that you have to take your time and figure it out as you go, as far as when is the right time to do certain things. Case in point, discipline. As a father as a stepfather coming into a situation, like Trey was my son, my only child at the time, and now I got a husband that comes into the situation, and you want to say, okay, he's stepfather, he should be disciplinarian, but it might not be time right away to do so. You know, it might be waiting on a certain level of the relationship to come up, and then present him as a disciplinarian. You know, you even think about how God said, those he loved, he chastened. So I think that it's a time where the child got to feel that love. You know, he's not taking over just because he's the father and he doesn't like the way you discipline, so I'm going to take over now. I'm the husband, I do this. I think there's a patience in waiting on the relationship to build and making sure both of them are comfortable with it. But at the same time, sometimes if I'm going to say I'm going to leave you to watch him, I got to let him have some authority. It can't be when your mama get home, we're going to, you know, so if you watching somebody's child, you have to assume some level of responsibility and discipline to not let that child do anything. So you got to, it's a delicate time balance, but the biggest thing is communicating through the whole thing. So everybody's on the same page and understanding what's the expectation and what we moving toward. And then me being a stepmother, the same thing as far as with Jalen being my stepson, coming in the door, the patience of building a relationship. You can't just jump all in both feet right away, you know, sitting back and seeing what he wants from me and, you know, allowing that to take time to, you know, to develop, to build, you know. But is there a certain timetable? I don't think there is, because it took many, many, many years before we developed a relationship, even with him being a little boy, you know. It took at least about 10 years before we even began to truly have a relationship.
That's very interesting, and we'll touch bases on that shortly. But the common denominator that I hear from both of you is that developing the relationship is really the center of the process. And we both spoke about some apprehensions in terms of if the parent is apprehensive of you disciplining the child. And if you're apprehensive about disciplining the child because you really don't know where you fit in, and if you haven't had that conversation or that communication to say, hey, this is the role I expect you to play, you know, I'm not going to just assume this role, because even if the biological parent is in or slightly in the picture, you know, you just don't want to over assert yourself in a point, and then you wind up, you know, like isolated.
Right,
Like,
getting your hand slapped.
right.
And that's a real danger, that whole isolation thing, you know, in families, because there were in blended families, let's assume that there's a husband, a wife, and a child. Let's assume the wife has the child and the husband is the stepfather. They've got a relationship that you've got nothing to do with. There's a connection and a bond there that you've got absolutely no part in, no say in whatsoever. That's been developed since before that child was born. And so now when you come into that setting, you're the third man. You know, make no mistake about that. But what you've got to do is you've got to figure out a way to develop your own lane with the child so that you all have your own thing as well. And you know, it may never be all that you thought it should be, but there are some times when it can be better than you possibly imagined.
You're working at it. Absolutely. So, I talked to the amazing parents in this dynamic. Let me talk to the seeds or the siblings. Trey, you're 29, but then 29 years ago or 25 years ago, you were the only child.
Yeah. Good times.
The only child. Were you the only child as well at the time?
No.
No. Okay. So you were okay. You were like number 2 or something like that with your mom. I'm saying with your mom.
Oh, I was first over there, but I wasn't the only.
Okay, gotcha. So you're the first. So, but at that point, at that particular point, and so essentially, that's this dynamic of this a new experience for you. But you were old enough to kind of understand that something's changing, right?
Yeah.
And in our production meeting, we talked about how you were, so common with Pastor John. He was the only dad figure that you knew at that particular time. Give me your perspective as to, when this whole dynamics changed. Now he went from boyfriend to fiance to now this dude's my dad, or my father. So tell me about that.
The crazy thing is, because I was so young, I don't really remember the different phases of when they were dating versus engaged to getting married. I have 2 earliest memories with him. Was one of the first things was I had a Sega Genesis and he bought me the Sonic game.
Okay.
He bought me the Knuckles game that connects on top that goes with the Sonic game. And then I remember the wedding. So it was like, I don't remember really, I just remember him being there. I don't remember being introduced to him. I remember my earliest memory is him just being there all the time. So it was like, I was too young to know life without him,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it was different because when they did finally explain it to me, as I was a little, like after the wedding, and they let me know kind of like, just so you know, he's not your biological dad. You have a biological dad. He's your stepdad. And so that kind of was weird because it was like I said, it was all I knew was him. Like, this is dad. And so that kind of, it was weird because it's just kind of like, okay, you almost kind of feel lied to, but then you don't because they was honest with you. So it's just a confused,
So let's go there just a little bit. How important was it for you both to explain this to Trey at that age?
It was.
It was very
It was. We wanted to make sure that there was no, and maybe it's because of my own familial upbringing,
Okay.
Which I made no secret about.
Okay.
My first memory of my mother is meeting her at the age of 10.
Okay.
My first memory of meeting my dad is at the age of 12. And so perhaps because of that, it was important that he knew that that there was a biological father out there, for him. And then that's just that openness, that honesty, I believe helped to just breed a certain level of relationship as well. Did we tell him too early? No, he understood it.
Right.
So,
So technically, you came from a reblended family too.
well, that's what I said. There are all kinds of blended families out there. There's a lot of ways to be messed up. There's a whole lot of ways to be messed up.
And we wanted him to still, I
Have a
wanted him to
relationship.
still have a relationship with his biological
Okay,
father.
right.
And so I wanted to leave a door open so that if he decided to be in his life or his family, that he knew who they were and they were out there, and if he wanted to see them, he could voice that. I thought it was important that, yes, you build a relationship with your stepfather, but you still should build a relationship with your biological father, because I understand there's this void. We can give all the love we want, but there's something about that blood biological parent that,
Can't be substituted.
yeah, it can't be. And so that we wanted to make sure we left that door open, that he understood, and he understood why his last name was different. I think that was spurred the whole thing too. When I took on his last name is different, so I wanted him to understand why his last name was different.
So what I'm hearing is you put the welfare of the child first.
Yeah.
Regardless of your differences with
Right,
the biological
right,
or whatever. You
right.
put the welfare of the child first.
Absolutely, because that role, that position is not a role of, biological father, particularly father, biological parent, but particularly father, is so important in the life of a young man or a young woman, and so anything that we can do to try and foster that, that's reasonable and healthy and safe, then I believe that we should do.
Jalen, you're 5 years old. Your father's in a new relationship,
Yeah.
in a different house, different place. How was that for you?
So I'm kind of similar to Trey in the sense that I was too young to truly understand what was going on. My earliest memories, my dad would take me like Burger King and stuff like that. We hang out.
Right.
And then I just remember one day, we go a little further than Burger King. And he takes me to grandma's house. Yeah, it was grandma's house. It was my step grandma's house.
Okay.
And you get out the car, you bring me on in, and I'm just looking around like, hey, Dad, what's up? say, man, what's going on around here? He said he asked me did I want to go downstairs to the basement, and I'm like, no. I didn't want to come over here at all. I thought we was going to Burger King, man.
Abraham questions, right?
Yeah. And so he's like, come on, I'll take you down there. And so I remember he puts me up on his neck, and he takes me down the stairs. Yeah, I was like 4 or 5.
That was 5. He was 4.
Yeah, and so he takes me down the stairs, and I come on down, and I see Uncle DJ, and that's my first time meeting Trey.
Okay.
And they're sitting there playing a video game, and he introduced me. He said, hey, this is DJ, and this is Trey. And they're like, hey, this is Jalen. And we all say what's up, and they were sitting there playing Mortal Kombat at the time. And then it was like, you want to play? I was like, yeah, I'll play. And so that was pretty much how it happened. That's how we hit it off.
So what I'm hearing is you didn't force the connection. You kind of let it organically build.
Exactly.
And so that's one of the things, the messages we talked about in our questions or pre-production meeting as well, is allowing the relationships to kind of organically build and don't really put a timetable on it, and don't also take negative behavior from the child personally, as far as the step parent.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with, you per se, as it does the situation that they may be uncomfortable in, and then because they're children, obviously, God only knows how they're going to respond to this, that, or the other,
Right.
And these are life-changing moments and things. So you've got to be compassionate, you've got to be slow, you've got to take your time and be careful when you're trying to deal with them, because you don't want to do more harm than good trying to enforce whatever your will is on the situation. So,
And that takes a lot of emotional intelligence too, right? Because at a point where you want to contribute so much, and then again, you don't know how much you want to assert yourself because of the pre-existing dynamics, right? And it could be a single parent where the child has no discipline at all, right? And I'm speaking more so to older children, and you come in and you that wasn't your scenario, but it's a very real scenario in terms of blended families today. And so, having that patience and try to understand as much as you can about learning about that child, not just the children, but being intentional about learning about that child or each child individually is so critical.
it is.
And we were young, so you're speaking about emotional intelligence, but we really didn't know what we were doing. Like, I'm gonna be really honest here. We were like figuring it out on the spot,
Okay.
because there was not a lot of talk about that beforehand. But after we got married, then all of a sudden it was like, oh man, we got to figure out this. So it was a lot of communication, and that was one of the great things about us that I will say is that we were kind of started a foundation. Okay, we're gonna be honest, we're gonna talk, and we're gonna allow each other to tell each other the truth, and we're gonna figure it out. But there was a lot of fear of messing them up. Like we really was like figuring it out as we go and trying to pay attention to what was working and what wasn't working and fill it out. And we agreed that we wanted to do what was best for them. Even if we have to take a step back with certain things that we felt like maybe we shouldn't. we decided like, okay, we don't want to jack them up no more. And we both came from blended families. I came from a blended family, so I lived with my stepfather, and so I try to take from what I went through and living with him and how he was with me. You know, I tried to take clues with that too, as far as how to be with Jalen and how to be with Trey, you know, being my biological and him being in this whole new world where he only had me, and now he has to share me with not only John, now he got to share me with Jalen. You know, so trying to figure all that out. It was rough. It was scary. It was emotional, like you said. And a lot of it, I'm gonna be honest, was the grace of God.
All of it.
Helping us through it, you know, it was the grace of God. Yeah.
So thank you for that. We're going to go two places. We're going to go to the biological, dealing with the biologicals, and then we're also going to touch bases on your individual experience coming into this relationship and as it evolved. Okay, and so the biologicals. Tell me about your relationship with Jalen's mom.
We had a cordial relationship. Yeah, we really didn't have a whole lot of problems. We kept it about the kids, or kid, excuse me. We kept it about the kid. You know, when she needed something. One of the things, you know, she didn't, I told her that if she, for example, wanted to put me on child support, no problem, go ahead and do that. Right. She said, well, that's not necessary as long as you do what needs to be done by him. And so what she would do is that she would tell me, well, he needs this, or he needs that, or he needs the other, and I would provide it. You know, that would be pretty much the way it worked. And we would give her whatever it was that she needed when she needed it. You know, we had to wait until a payday or something like that. But that was pretty much it. It was a very cordial relationship that worked well. The only real issues that we had in the early stages was obviously at one point in time she moved out of town and took him with her. And I begged her not to do that. But she, you know, she had to do what she thought was best. You know, and I understand that too.
Right. But I don't want to cut you off, but what you said was so, I think it can speak to the audience. She had to move, or she decided to move.
Sure.
A lot of people, a lot of husbands or ex-husbands or whatever, exes, have a huge problem with that and have a huge hard time dealing with that.
Sure.
What gave you the fortitude to deal with that?
Well, that's one of those grace of God things again. The grace of God is littered throughout this whole thing. Let's just be clear. Let's just be clear. Because like my wife said a moment ago, we had no idea what we were doing. So a lot of it was, you know, you were working it out as you went along. But that's pretty much what it was. And she worked with me as it relates to him coming back. You know, I got him every time, you know, every time there was an extended break from school, you know, a 4-day weekend or Thanksgiving or, you know, Christmas and summer break and spring break and all of those things, you know, we flew him back all the time. And so, you know, like I said, she did the best that she could do, and I had to understand that. She did the best that she thought she could do as a single mother with, at that time, I believe, 3 children.
Okay.
And so you really couldn't be too hard on her for doing what she thought was right, you know, because she was trying to make it work as best she could.
So I'm hearing 2 things. Effective communication was a huge part of this.
Sure.
And at some point, can I assume you were a man of your word?
I was at this point in my life. Once again, a grace of God thing. At that point in my life, I was, and she and my wife helped me in the areas where I would have been weak.
Right. So you openly solicit your wife's help in that situation?
Absolutely.
That's critical.
She wasn't. Well, a couple of things. First of all, like with our finances, all the money goes into one pot, right? And so since all the money goes into one pot, there is no, well, you know, you use your money and take care of that. Right. It's all our money. You know, these are all our children. And so that's pretty much the mindset that we had to have with that. And she agreed with that. You know, she agreed with that. Now, mind you, she would agree with that as well, obviously with Jalen, because I'm also agreeing with it with Trey.
Right.
You know, so there is no, well, take your money and do for Trey. No, it's all our money. These are all our kids, and we're going to figure it out and work together on it.
So the unity. It sounds
Yeah.
like the unity was a huge theme. Communication, working together. Didn't know what you were doing, but we're gonna do it together, whatever
Right.
it is.
We're gonna rise or
We're all
fall,
in.
sink or swim together.
And so, and I think that's critical that the people need to hear is that you know you're coming into something that's so new and so dynamic and has the potential to really implode if it's not done
yeah.
carefully, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
And, and with minimal, or not necessarily minimal, but don't overestimate, you know, the timetable for when this thing is gonna jail, right?
Right.
You know,
Right.
allow some mistakes, allow some rejection. You know,
yeah.
and
You're gonna get plenty of it.
Yeah, yeah.
you're gonna make plenty of mistakes, and you're gonna get plenty of rejection.
Right. So that patience is critical. So I thank you. So tell me about the biological situation that you had to endure, which not necessarily I learned from the production meetings that not necessarily the same dynamic as John.
You mean as far as Trey's father?
Yes.
Well, it was different with his father in that he was kind of in and out. He was not consistent in his life. So when bringing around Trey with John, one of the biggest things when we got married is you have to be consistent. Like it was pressure on him and duly put, you know, I do not want him hurt and disappointed with promises that you can't uphold. So that was one thing we definitely talked about beforehand. Like if you can't, not that they had to be like mushy, lovey-dovey, that kind of thing, but you have to have integrity. Like you have to do what you said you were gonna do with him. Like I cannot have him disappointed on both ends. And me and his biological father had this conversation too. You know, you either gonna be in his life or you're not. You don't call him, say you're gonna come and do this, and then don't show up. Like he needs consistency. He needs somebody who's gonna be there, and so he accepted that, and that was what he wanted to do. And so having to deal with his father, even before getting married, I kind of knew he was in and out. I accepted that was who he was, but still left the door open for if he wanted to be, let him be. And, you know, John accepted that, like, whether he liked it or not,
Right.
you know, he
It's preset shoes, right? It's like,
whether he,
I
you
don't
know,
even have room to make
and I
mistakes.
understand it wasn't fair.
Yeah,
I understand it
yeah.
isn't fair.
It's not.
I'm acknowledging it's not fair. I'm asking you to do what his biological won't do, and it's not optional.
but
for
it's a
you.
package deal.
But it's a package deal,
And
and I
you made
understand.
that
Right,
clear
at
in
the
the relationship. You
beginning.
made that as that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
contingency.
that's the contingency for this
And
relationship.
that's critical
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you talk about setting precedent. We talked about that in our notes too. Setting standards, setting the
Yes.
expectations
Yes. That's
right.
of how we're going to
Right.
engage. What is my expectations for you with my child? My expectations or your expectations for me with your child, our children now in this blended family. And so she put you to the test.
Right.
Sure.
And obviously you passed.
Right.
sure.
Right.
But it wasn't easy.
Yeah, no,
No.
oh, absolutely not. I mean, it's not easy when the child is yours. So,
Right,
you know,
right.
So imagine when the child isn't. It's absolutely not easy. But it is what it is. This is the job.
Right.
Now you either accept it and step up to the plate, or you don't and quit wasting people's time.
Yeah. And the other thing we did too is when we talked, when he was gonna deal with Jalen's mom, I let him deal with her. But we had an understanding of respect, like your conversations are about Jalen.
That's right.
There's no small talk, catching up.
No.
But you know, there's none of that. We talk about Jalen and taking care of him, and that's as far as the conversation goes. And the same thing with me if I'm talking to Trey's father. We talking about Trey, what's going on him, what he needs, and that's all the relationship is. There is no other stuff, and so he respected me to handle that and be respectful of him, and I did the same. So, you know, when things came up, me and Jalen's mom, we didn't talk much. We rarely talked. I think certain situations come up where we had to speak, but me and her rarely interacted. And the same thing with John, he rarely interacted. But we upheld this trust and integrity that conversations will stay respectful and will stay at what they're supposed to be, you know, in order that I feel comfortable with what's going on and he feel comfortable with what's going on. So I think that has to be established too.
Absolutely. You defined the rules of engagement
Mm-hmm.
from the onset.
Absolutely.
It was, we're not leaving anything into interpretation.
Right.
This is
right.
what I expect of you in terms of how your communication is going to go. And this is also, more importantly, this is how I support you.
Exactly.
Right, right. You know,
Exactly.
how we're going to support one another. And there's going to be challenges on both sides,
Yeah,
but this,
yeah.
if we preset the rules of engagement in terms of communication, it allows us to go
Right.
through whatever issues in a smoother
Right.
way.
Absolutely.
And not saying negative things about the other in front of,
That's right.
not saying it to him or the child.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like we talked about, you know, I'm not gonna sit and bag mouth Trey's father in front of Trey, nor is John gonna be doing that too.
Right.
I'm not going to do that.
And I'm not gonna badmouth Jalen's mom in front of Jalen, nor am I gonna do that to John. Like that, we not gonna have that dynamic either. So,
And the funny thing about that is even now, at 29 years old and 28 years old, we still don't say anything bad about their biological parents.
It just speaks to maturity because life happens. Life happens to you, and neither one of us are obsolete from or superly protected from becoming in the conditions that those individuals are, right? And being irresponsible or whatever. We're
know,
all
Liz,
susceptible to that.
What I say about people, is particularly as it relates to raising children, is that they're doing the best they can with what they know to do. And that's just the reality.
That's powerful.
You know, I don't believe that any of them are, and not just talking about this situation, but any of these situations with blended families, that the biological parent or the step parent, any of them, are trying to do harm to the child. I believe that they're doing what they think is right within the capacity that they operate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're doing the best that they can with what they have.
That's critical, but for what I'm also hearing from here is that you also, as a parent, a single parent, you also have to have the tenacity and the integrity to say they're trying, but they're trying in a way that could damage the child. So I've got to put a stop to this or some type of barrier in between this damage or damage control, if you will. And so you take on the thing of trying to give him stability by soliciting a family model for yourself in terms of having a husband and you having a wife. And so, these things that try to give the child some stability, right? And so what I heard you say earlier, which I think is so critical for that we share with everyone else, is that you allow the child to make their own determination about the biological parent. You're not going to coach that in such a way that's negative. You're not going to create any of your own agenda essentially with the child in terms of we talked about this, Jalen, in terms of tell her this. If she says this to you, say this, those type of things. And so tell me about that. And then we're going to talk about my favorite part of the session is the children's perspective of what they went through and who they are now. So tell me about that in terms of, you were allowed to have your own interpretation of your father, your biological father. And what was that like for you?
It was difficult because it was weird because when you see things, a lot of things you see on TV is the person bad mouthing the other one or saying like, I do this better than your dad or whatever. But she didn't try to force me to have a relationship with him, but she always encouraged me. Even to this day, she encourages me to leave the door open for a relationship with him. Like, so it was times growing up when I was like, forget him. Like, I don't want to see him anymore. I've been upset too many times. Like, I'm done with him. And she'll be like, don't do that. Think about it. Like, she never, the thing is, I feel like I hate when people say this. She never used the excuse like, he's your father. So made it seem like it was an obligation to me to have a relationship with him because he's my biological father. Right. And I feel like that was awesome because that's not a stipulation to have a relationship with somebody, in my opinion. People may not believe it or whatever. In my opinion, that shouldn't be a stipulation for you to put up if someone's not healthy for you just because they're biologically related to you. So for her to still be like, Trey, when was the last time you talked to your dad? Or anybody over there, when was the last time you talked to your grandparents on that side? And I'll say it's been a while. She'll be like, "Oh, are you gonna reach out?" She'll make suggestions, but she won't. It will never be like. She'll never make me do anything. She'll make suggestions. She'll always plant a seed, and then every once in a while she'll come and water it. Come water. And I found myself time to time reaching out to him. He called, I'll answer. I invited him to my wedding. I invited him to the milestone of my life because of her. It really, not because she made me, just because those seeds she was always watering with me growing up. Like, don't be bitter. Like, to me, having anger towards somebody is like you drinking poison and expecting them to die. Like, so it's like all you're doing is hurting yourself more by trying to hold a grudge against this person for whatever reason, whatever they did. And so it was weird just because it was different. It wasn't what I expected. Looking back and seeing how she treated my relationship with my biological father wasn't what I expected it to be. But it turned out to be positive for me, I feel like, as a person, because like you said, it let me make my own decision, form my own opinion of him that I don't feel like she never forced on me, and I was able to develop it on my own growing up.
Sounds like part of you wanted to be like, "Hey, mom, you should be angry with me."
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It was like you should be
He
like,
did you just
yeah,
like this too.
exactly.
You know, we're here
Like,
because of him.
I'm your
right,
son.
right,
Like, you
right.
should be helping me
Right.
out. You should be defending me when he tells me this is gonna happen and it doesn't happen, and you see me get upset. You should be like, Trey, yeah, we're done with him. But it's like you're that person that's like, don't be like that. Don't harden your heart. Like, don't be like that. Like, always leave the door open. Don't burn bridges. Was main both of them taught me growing up. Don't burn bridges because you never know when you may need to cross that bridge for something. So don't burn it.
You know, my mom used to always say it's like you separate your values from a value in a situation, right? Don't lose your values because you're going through a situation. And I think that's what it sounds like your mom continued to convey to you is the value of connection, reaching out, communication is so critical, so powerful. And even though you might not be ready for it now, at some particular time in your life, that relationship may be more valuable for you, right? And so that's real good stuff, and it's really good to share that with people because they may not necessarily be the person that is good for the child to help the child develop at that stage, but at some point, there's always. The Bible says it this way: honor thy mother and thy father, and it will help add to the length of thy days. And so it is a commandment that we must do. We must do.
But what that looks like
Right.
can vary
Yeah.
from one
Yeah.
situation to
Yeah.
the next.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What honoring your father and mother look like, you know, can be different.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
my honoring my mother is different than Rena honoring her mother. You know.
Right.
And,
That's good.
and don't get me wrong, I went through the angry phase before when everything happened when he was little. I was angry, I was bitter, you know, and it was a time to get through that for me. And so when I worked through that, I didn't want him to go. I knew he would be angry, and so I didn't want him to be bitter and upset. You know, so when I worked through it and decided, you know, the situation was what it was. I'm not going to be bitter. I'm going to forgive him, and I'm going to try to move on. And part of that was because my father wasn't in my life, and he wasn't there consistently.
Wow.
And I had his family in my life. They were amazing. I was much older when I realized I was like an illegitimate child. But how they treated me,
You wouldn't have known.
I wouldn't have known. My grandmother was so good to me. My aunties and uncles were so good to me on my biological father. And he was, you know, he lived in another state. He was military. I rarely saw him, rarely talked to him. And there was no love missing. There was nothing lost.
Right.
And so I just didn't want, he had so many people that loved him. And he didn't miss out on anything. So I didn't want him to be angry and bitter. So when I wanted to coach him past that, like, in the end of the day, you're not losing anything. You know, it's his loss.
It's
when,
just stuff for me to gain.
right,
Like,
it's
and I'm
nothing,
not
you know.
losing anything.
Yeah, so I wanted him to see that perspective, but don't get me wrong, like I went through that angry, bitter phase with his father and had to reflect on my life and my father, and like I wanted that door to be open with him, so I felt like for him, and for his family, that door should stay open because of that. So
You set aside your pain
yeah,
so that
yeah.
he could have a better.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
powerful.
and let go of the
Selflessness.
pain. Like
Yeah.
at some point, I had to let go of that pain.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted for him.
And I think, and I know you're going to go to Jalen, but
Yep.
really quickly, I
He-
think
he'll
as
be
well.
itching.
But I think as well, an interesting point that Rena made is that part of the bitterness, the anger, that I also felt as a child, not being raised by my parents,
Right.
is that you think you're missing something.
Right.
And part of the healing that God brings about, particularly in my life, but I believe in theirs as well, is showing that whatever you think you were missing, I can get you.
Amen. Amen. I totally agree with that.
I can get you the acceptance that you thought you should have gotten.
Right.
I can get you the love you thought you should have gotten. I can get you the mentoring or whatever it is that you thought you should have gotten. And different than the different than the biological situation, parent situation, in terms of the step parent situation, is I can get you the things that you want from somebody that chooses you and chooses to give it to you.
That's powerful.
Because I say this all the time, particularly as it relates to Trey, is that, my biological children, my biological sons, of which there are 4 biological sons and then Trey, I didn't choose them. They were pretty much the luck of the draw. It was a crapshoot with what I got with them. Whereas with Trey, I knew exactly who I was getting, and I said, yeah, give me him. I'll take that one right there.
I get exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's powerful. That's
Yeah.
powerful. You made a conscious decision.
You make a conscious.
That's right.
When you become a step parent, you're making a conscious decision about not only that person you're marrying, but everything that that person is bringing with them, particularly if it's a child.
Good. So one of our future sessions are going to be fatherless children, and you just touched on something there. Is that's real critical because you're looking for that stability, right? You're looking, you grow up and you don't have that environment where your biological mother and father are there, and the children you go to school with, everybody lets you know that those are not your parents, right? And even if no matter how you hide it or whatever, when the last names are different, there's all these questions. And looking for that level of stability is so critical.
Sure.
Where I want to go now is to me, like I said, one of my favorite parts of the production meeting is talk to me, Jalen, about, you're 5 years old and now you're traveling from your mom's house to your dad's house. Tell me about your interaction with that.
Yeah, so from what I remember, it was, pretty much Monday through Friday afternoon, I was at my mom's, going to school and stuff like that. And pretty much I think with the exception of 2 weekends that I remember, every Friday my dad was coming to pick me up Friday evening in that gold Grand Caravan. And I was hopping in the back and Trey was right there waiting for me, and then John was waiting for me, and then it just kept growing. But that's what I remember, and I would spend Friday night and Saturday night there, go to church with them on Sunday. We hang out till around the evening, and then he dropped me off back in Elgin to my mom's, and that was an every weekend thing.
Now, John mentioned at some point you moved away with your mom
Yeah.
to another state.
Yeah, so when I was 10 years old, my mom decides, hey, we're moving to Las Vegas. The stuff that he had mentioned about begging her not to go, I knew nothing about that. So kind of to speak about the relationship dynamics, they kept me out of that stuff as far as their conversations. I knew nothing about it. It was always for me kind of they just give me a order. It was, they would have the conversations in the back room, and then they come to me, hey, pack your bags, you going to stay with your dad for the summer. Pack your bag, you going for winter break. That was all I knew. Luckily, thankfully, I should say. But when I went to Vegas, it became a lot different because now I'm gone for much longer periods of time. Now it's not every weekend thing. Now it's every couple of months.
Right.
And so that became a lot different because also at that same time, the family was growing. in terms of I got new brothers showing up and stuff like that. And so it became a lot different because, you know, I would leave and I'm gone for months at a time and I come back and then Jeremiah is here and I leave and I come back and then James is born and I leave and come back and now Jeremiah and then, you know, Jeremiah, who was crawling when I left, now he's running.
Right,
You know,
right.
James, who was, you know, I had to feed him a bottle while I was here. Now he talks. You know, and so, you know, life is happening in that time while I'm gone. Also, I look different too because you know,
Right.
at the time I'm 10, 11, 12 years old. So we all look different.
Right.
You know, and so that's how that dynamic was. There's a lot of just in and out, in and out, in and out.
So let's talk about a little bit more of the conflicting part of it.
Yeah.
John said in the production meeting, life was happening without you,
Yeah.
right? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so that was one of the negative things about the blended family from my perspective was the isolation that I felt because I was so in and out. I was the oddball in the group. Everybody else was there to stay, and then I would pop in for a few months, you know, during the summertime, and you know we have a great time together. You know, me and my brothers. It was never any issues with us. We got along very seamlessly. But it was just like, you know, just when the fun was getting good, all right, y'all, I got to go. And it was like, oh, man, you leaving? And yeah, it's time to go, you know, and
right.
then I leave, you know, and be very sad. You know, I remember, you know, airports were like the worst part of my childhood, but at the same time, the most exciting part of my childhood because airports, you know, they symbolized you know, being sad and, you know, in not wanting to leave, but at the same time I'd be excited because I got two other siblings on the other side of the country that I get to go back to and I hang out with them and then I leave them and, you know, so I was always in and out of both sides.
A lot of logistics.
Yeah.
You know, you're looking at it like this is conflicting, like, oh my goodness, like, you know, and then Trey, you said something in the production where you said that you were almost jealous or envious of it because he's got this opportunity to go somewhere else to another family.
Yeah, for
So
me,
tell me about that.
I did have a jealousy, Jay, and that was one of the reasons why I feel like I did want to have a relationship because it felt like to me, I was like, all right, I have to share my dad with you, I have to share my mom with you, but you have something that's yours in a sense that's separate from me, and to me, I feel like that played a role in also the reason why I would be so angry that I didn't have a relationship with my dad. Because like I have nothing separate from him. I never took it out on him. I was never angry at him. I was angry at the fact that and jealous at the fact that okay, I'm sharing all of my stuff with you, but you don't have to share everything with me. So I in turn want to be able to have something separate from you since you got something separate from me.
Valid feelings though, because this is a dynamic that happens in blended families today.
Yeah.
And so, so you're feeling that way. He's feeling like this is crazy. I'm going back and forth. Now, tell me about your siblings in your mom's house.
Yeah, so
How they felt.
yeah, so over there I have a brother who's the middle child, and I have a baby sister. My brother has autism, so he doesn't speak or anything like that. But my baby sister, she's fine. And you know, when I was
So she talks enough for both of them.
yeah, you trust me.
We are live, but it
But no, so over there, like I said, because I was the odd guy kind of bouncing back and forth between homes. You know, my sister and my brother, their father wasn't as present in their life either. And so my sister, when she became old enough to realize what was going on, because she's 4 years younger than me, when she became old enough to kind of see what was going on and how in and out I am, she kind of began to say things like, you know, I wish my dad would come and get me. I wish my dad would come and see me, you know, and stuff like that. And you know, at the time, we really didn't understand the relationship dynamics between her dad and my mom and everything like that. But, you know, she began to express things like that. And she didn't necessarily do it in a direct setting, but she would just kind of say certain things, just kind of throw things out there, you know, that she noticed a difference between us and that she desired to do the same thing.
so the three siblings are part of the exact same situation in
Yeah.
some respects, having three different perspectives on the same
On the same situation. All of them seeing the same car crash, but from different corners.
which speaks to what we talked about earlier in terms of growing that relationship with that individual child.
Yeah,
You know, learning how to pay attention to that particular child. We've got a couple minutes left before we're going to open it up to closing, you know, comments. I want to talk real quickly about your struggle, Rena, with getting closer to Jalen.
Oh man.
What was funny, what was different is Jalen had a mom.
Right.
She was active in his life. She was a good mother. And so my role coming into his life was not to be stepmom. I was a stepmom, but my role really wasn't that. And so it was a conscious thing to understand that that was okay. I didn't have to step in and be mom. And there was no competition. You know, I was his father's wife. And so that was swallowing that down and being okay with that was the beginning. And that was okay because when Jaden first started coming around, initially I thought his shyness was because he was shy.
Okay.
You know, he was coming into a new situation and he was quiet. So I thought it was because the situation. And then I eventually realized, no, it wasn't the situation, it was me, you know, because he would talk to his brothers and have a ball. He would talk to my brother who was 14 years younger and have a ball. He would be with John, have a ball. But when it came to me, he was silent, nothing, didn't say a word. The other boys are calling me mom. They kissing me and hugging me, and he's just sitting there. And I noticed that he didn't call me at all. He didn't say mom. He didn't say Rena. Like, he didn't say hey lady. He did not say anything to me. And so in that, I had to learn though not to take it personal. Right? It was a conscious effort to say, I know I didn't do anything to hurt him or harm him. And I know I had nothing to do with the situation with his mom and his dad. So it was like really thinking about it and understanding that and being okay with that, allowing him to establish what he wanted from me, but yet still opening the door for if he want more, I'm okay with it. But if he didn't, I'm okay with it, you know? And so over time, the other dynamic was understanding that I had to come to a conclusion that I'm gonna do what I do for him, regardless to what he gives back to me. I cannot expect a thank you. I can't expect I appreciate you. I can't expect him to change how he feel about me. I have to do it because it's the right thing to do.
So you gave him unconditional love.
It had to be that, and then my family, my side, having to understand like he's my son too. When he's around, he gets treated like any other kid gets treated, regardless to how he is around you guys. Even if he's not talking to you, even if he's quiet, he is treated the same as any of my other kids, you know. So for years it was like that, probably until, you know, high school.
Yeah.
He eventually started actually speaking to me, you know, talking to me, and eventually one day he called me mom, which was like out of the blue. And the surprising part about that is then I got scared, right? I got pulled back because I felt like I was the mistress, the other woman. Like it was crazy. It was a crazy dynamic. It flipped on me. Like when he started seeing me as mom and building a relationship, I loved it. You know, because, you know, I really cared about him. I was interested and wanted to have my relationship. But then I got scared and I wanted to pull it back and be like, no, because I was scared of getting hurt as the other woman. So
Valid feelings.
it was like, it was a real situation that took some years to work out, you know, time to work out.
So, I love you, I love you, I love you. No, mom, I'm not hearing that. No, lady. Right. She didn't even have a name.
Yeah, no thank you, ma'am.
Emoji. John's wife. Right.
Right.
Tell me about
Right.
what were you
Know my
thinking?
dad's wife.
Yeah, so of all the relationships I had to develop in this blended family, I would say Trey was by far the easiest. It was very simple.
Yeah, video games.
Yeah, you know, two boys and video.
language.
Yeah, you know, two boys, a video game and some pizza. You know, leave us alone. We'll figure it out.
WWE.
And wrestling.
Yeah, wrestling and everything else we did. But she was by far my biggest challenge. I don't know why I was so apprehensive. maybe in the beginning is because I had a mom.
Okay.
And I really didn't understand the difference. I didn't know how to manage the difference between the two when I was younger. When I came out here to live with my dad, I was 15.
Yeah.
And at that time, my mother and I's relationship hit a few bumps in the road.
Right.
And so when I came out here very heartbroken and angry. And so that threw a really big monkey wrench in she and I developing a relationship because I assumed that she wanted to occupy the space that my mother had.
Right.
And I was very apprehensive toward that because my heart was broken at the time. And
So not co-parent, but replace.
That's
That was
what
what you were thinking.
yeah,
Okay.
and so to protect myself, what I thought I was doing, I would just reject any advances that she made toward me for us to build our own relationship. She would she would come into my room and ask me, hey, how was school today? Fine. How was
Short answers, right?
yeah, how was basketball? Good. What kind of drills y'all do? Couple shooting, couple dribbling. I just try to keep it short and simple so that, so I didn't want to give her any access to me because I figured if she didn't have access, then she can't hurt me. Right.
Wow.
So,
That's
and so that's what I thought was best for me at that time. Now,
So
what
you self-isolated.
self-isolated for sure,
Yeah.
because I thought I was protecting myself. Right. Now, what I didn't know at the time was what she was trying to give me was what I absolutely needed.
Right.
I needed that real bad at the time, but I thought, I thought what I thought. I thought that she's trying to get close to me to do what to me? I don't know. She's gonna do something to disappoint me or hurt me, and I don't want to feel like what I feel right now.
Wow.
And so if I don't talk to you, if I don't spend time with you more than I have to,
But there's no risk. I minimize the risk.
and that's what I was doing. I was minimizing my risk.
Wow. So tell me about when that changed for you.
Sure. So when it changed for me, I remember in particular one time, it was a process. It was like growing a plant. For me, it was like growing a flower with me. Okay, which Trey spoke about her watering the plant. She had to make several trips over and over again to water the plant for me. She had to monitor it very closely. But it was in high school. I was on the basketball team, and anybody who knows me, I think basketball is close to heaven as we
Okay.
gonna get here on earth.
Okay.
And so I absolutely love basketball, and I was playing basketball and everything like that. And I remember I had a game. It was an away game. It was from my high school, and she ended up showing up to the game. And at the time, my dad was working nights, so if I had a basketball game during the week, he really couldn't show up because he would be at work during the time of the games. And so we were warming up and everything like that for the game, getting ready to go. And I look up, and she's walking down the court. And I kind of look, and I'm like, well, why are you here? But okay, okay. She we made eye contact. She waved at me. I waved back at her, and then I realized during the course of the game nobody else showed up, and she came by herself, and she came without any of the middlemen that kind of link us together.
Right.
She didn't come with my dad or any of my brothers or anything like that. She came by herself, and she was the one person in the crowd there to support me.
Wow.
And so that's when I realized that, okay, I don't think she wants to hurt me. And so from there, that was when I started to come out my cave, and instead of her making the effort to come and invade my space, now I come into her room. I would go in her and my dad's room, and I ask her, hey, how was work today? What are you up to? What are you doing? She being there doing her hair, and I want to sit and talk to her while she's doing her hair, and they just began. I think like she said, I think she was scared at that time too. But
Right. He come there. How was your work day? Fine.
Right. Flip the script, right?
yeah,
Right. What you want? What
Yeah.
you really want, right?
right. And so I think that's when I started to come out of my shell, and then we just began to continue to grow and build this relationship. And kind of like how my dad said, the beautiful part about it is we chose to do it, and it was totally separate from him or any of my brothers.
That's
You
huge.
know,
That's
yeah.
huge. You chose to have a relationship with your stepmom.
Yeah.
And you chose to give her a new name.
Yeah. Chose to give her a new name. I
You
would
chose
call
to give
her.
her a new name.
Yeah, I would call her when I was young. I would call her. I'll call you Rena or Miss Rena or something like that. If I called you anything at all, most of the time I just wouldn't say
I
nothing.
mean, I had to say to him, it's okay not to call me mom. You know,
Yeah.
you can call me Rena. And then eventually he would say Miss. Sometimes he would say
Right,
Rena,
Yeah.
Miss Rena.
and then I began to call her mom, and it was interesting in terms of God's timing and how He does things, because around the time when I began to open up and develop a relationship with her, me and my mother, we began to take a turn in our relationship as well.
Wow.
For the better. And it was kind of simultaneous in terms of the development of both of them. It was very interesting. to
So
watch
your
things.
unconditional love, staying in the sidelines, you know, loving him no matter what how he acts and reacts to your love, led him to one day see that you were genuine and pure in heart about your intentions towards Jalen. And in turn, you reciprocated that love back because now you felt like it was safe to be loved.
Yeah.
Powerful, powerful. There's one more dynamic, and we'll go into closing statements. There was a time in the blended family where Trey John approached you about your last name.
Well, when you told the story in the pre-production, there was a part of it that you didn't tell. You didn't tell the beginning of it, which was years prior.
Okay.
Right when I going into high school, right? It was the first time you approached me about
Well,
it.
she helped me out.
Well, when
You know
when
my
he
memory
was
trash. So she corrected.
well when he was younger, at one point he asked. We was talking about his last name, and he had said he wanted to be adopted by John, and that his last name be the same as us. And so me and John had talked about it, and we decided that he was too young to make that decision.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day, we was great. It was great that he had accepted John, but I just felt like he was too young to make that decision. So we had told him, why don't you wait until you're older? We'll rediscuss it and see how you feel then about it, if you want to do it.
Right.
And Trey doesn't even remember the conversation to
fair.
speak to how young he
Right.
is. And so when Trey pick up is me and John talking about it. Okay, now is a good time to readdress
To
it. If you
readdress
really
it.
want to do
So
it,
was years and years.
this was years later to see if he
Right.
still wants to do it. So that's the one that now Trey remembers, you know. That he,
But the common point is that you gave Trey the decision.
yeah.
At each
yeah,
point, it was
yeah.
essentially Trey's
Yeah,
decision.
and gave him time to develop into actually making it. I mean, we could have tried to run with the original thought, which
and we
I don't.
kind of wanted to.
Yeah, sure. You know, ain't nothing like one name on the mailbox.
Yeah.
But we said, you know what, he may feel differently later.
Right, right.
So let's just give him a minute. We can always go change it. So let's give him a minute and go see and see how it happens.
So now you're given that opportunity.
So to my memory of it was when I was graduating, about to graduate high school, and I was going to go into college. And so they approached me with it because it was like, since you're about to start filling out applications, things like that, you're going to start having your own stuff now. It was like, did you want to change your last name so that we can get this process started now, so that once you're 18 and gone, everything's already good, last name's Thompson. So, like I said, he didn't even remember this conversation, and this is actually one of the biggest turning points, and I feel like, from my perspective, between my relationship, my dynamic of what it was with him when he elevated from it was stages of it. It was my mom's husband, it was my father, and this is when he became dad, which is, to me, if I can give any advice out there, any man that's in a role with a child, strive to be their dad, not their father.
Not just their father.
Not just their father, because I said a father can happen by accident. Father is just a biological blood link. You can be a father and, as I can say, not be a part of their life. But the dad is one who made the choice, who looked at me and said, I want that one. I want to be a dad to that one. So this is when our relationship, in my perspective, even though I was 18, like went to a whole nother, skyrocketed to a whole nother level. So He approached me with it. He gave me time to think. This is when I was still in high school. I didn't graduate yet. They wanted to talk about it so that when I graduated, we could start the process. And I came back after I thought about it, and for my own reasons, I told them, I was like, I'll keep my last name for my reasons. And there was no hint of anger, bitterness, even disappointment or sadness from me saying this to him. It was just kind of like, okay, nothing changed. We kept going. And even though, like, the fact that it's such a huge thing for me, but he doesn't remember it, I actually take that as a good thing because it shows he showed no emotional resentment or any emotional feelings towards that. For me, it was a huge thing for me, but I like that he doesn't remember it because it's just like, it really was not that. It was a choice that he gave me and relied it completely on me.
Right.
And when I made the choice, he rolled with the choice. And so it's been, you know what I'm saying? So that's when I kind of looked at him and I was like, all right, that's my guy. Like, he legit loves me for me and what I decide. Like, obviously, he don't agree with everything I do, but he'll love me in spite of my choices.
Powerful. We're going to go into closing statements. And the continual theme that I'm hearing, and you said this in production meeting the other day, is that the children don't necessarily receive or understand the full value of everything you're trying to give them when they're young. But there's a fruit that is bared when they're older and they can apply those values. Talk to me about that.
One of the things that's very good, because I had something in my head that I wanted to say. One of the things that's always been very important to me as a father is that my sons develop a relationship that outlives me. Because you know what happens when the common thread dies, everybody falls apart.
Yeah.
Big Mama dies, everybody falls apart. Only reason we ever got together was because of Big Mama, and so I wanted to always make sure that my boys had their own individual relationships. I used to tell them, be it rightly or wrongly, I used to tell them, all you got is your brothers, everybody else is a stranger. And so, because I wanted to make sure that they had bonds with one another. And I think that as a part of that, there were even times, and I think I said this, I know me and Rena had this conversation, there were times when I would be the bad guy, purposefully. Remember we were talking about that? Purposefully, deliberately. I'm making everybody mad, all 5 of them. All y'all gonna be mad at me. Why? Because then they're gonna be mad at me together.
Okay.
And they'll even bond around being mad at me.
This dude, right?
I kid you not.
This dude conversation, right?
I kid you not. But remember those conversations? We would have those conversations as well. And why'd you do that? So they can be mad at me together. And so, but
It worked.
Get your clothes.
But-
Royale.
right. But establishing those independent relationships is all important because that's really what's going to stand the test of time. Particularly in blended family situations.
Powerful, real powerful. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Trey. What advice would you have for children in blended families today?
My advice to them is to, as much as they're trying to seek common ground with you, sometimes you have to seek common ground with them. You have to build a relationship separate of what attaches you to each other. I had to find something with him that was separate from my mom. So if my mom is gone, I can still have a good time and not just kind of wait for her to get back. So I would say that whatever it is, like, granted, naturally, me and him had a lot of things in common.
Sure.
So we were able to, I feel like, smoother with that. But sometimes you have to make it intentional. You have to find something that they like that you can tolerate and put yourself into that. From the kid side to them, from them to you. So that would be my advice, is try to find, I feel like a relationship would go so much smoother if you can find something you guys have in common that you both can tolerate or like. If they like bowling and you absolutely detest bowling, don't try to dive into bowling because it can create a wedge rather than bring you together. So I would say try to find a common ground with each other and have patience with them trying to figure out how to handle you, and have patience with yourself trying to figure out what the heck you want them to be for you.
That's critical. That's critical. Thank you, Trey. Come on, Jalen.
Oh, well, I mean, he kind of hit it on the head.
Right,
there.
you took all my
Yeah,
took
no,
everything I was
no,
gonna say.
no, you good, you good. No, I mean, everything he said was everything he said was, I mean, it was spot on. I think you just have to you have to be very intentional about what your intentions are. You got to be patient with each other. You got to leave room for rejection. Thank you very much. But you have, and I think from the kid's standpoint, you know, you have to at some point or another, and maybe it'll just take time because as a kid, you know, you're still growing and developing your own ways of thinking and stuff like that. But at some point or another, you have to look outside of yourself in terms of, you know, whatever you're feeling. At the time, I think that was one of the biggest things for me was when I kind of decided that, okay, I'm familiar with what I think happened to me and, you know, hurt me and all of that stuff. But maybe if I try looking at it from a different angle, I'll realize, you know, the beauty in having a blended family, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say that that's one of the biggest things I would do is try looking at it from different perspectives, different angles. But that'll take time.
All right. Rena.
A lot of it has been said. I would say communication and patience is a big thing, and letting everybody be who they are. You know that song, "Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself." You remember that song?
Yes,
You old
yes.
enough? There's there's a beauty in acceptance and allowing each other to be who we are,
Yeah.
and knowing that if I reveal myself to you, you are gonna still be there. You know, having this place that no matter where I go in the world, I always got a home to come to. I always got a place to come home to with people who love and accept me for me. Not to say that we accept anything. You know, we have some standards that you're accountable to.
Right.
But it's still going to be a place of love and some people that's going to be there for you and who you are and each individual person. You know, one of the things we learned right away is whereas we got to love all of them the same and treat them all the same. It's yours, mine, and it grows to ours. You know. At the same time, we gotta let them be individuals and deal with them individually to what needs go with them. You know, Trey, I felt bad for because he was the oldest, so he had it the hardest.
Yeah.
There was an expectation as you the older brother, you only get so much slack because they're watching you. And I'm sorry, but that it is what it is, you know. And Jalen got to be the little brother when he was over, and so Jalen got a little bit more slack when he came over. You know, and then you know it went down. You know, his punishment might have been he couldn't go outside and play the video game. Where another one's punishment, I remember one of our sons, we took his book away. And Trey was flabbergasted. He was like, he can't read a book for a punishment? But that was his thing. At the time, he loved his Nook and his book. And so taking that away from him was devastating to him. And so
Other ones we made do
he hated it. And so, you know, learning who they are individually, learning what works for them individually, yet still learning how to treat them the same, letting them all feel the same love, letting them all be themselves and accepting all that, you know, and as a parent, allow them to see your flaws and be honest with them about your mistakes and your past and how you're trying to figure it out, you know, along with them. I think help is key to that communication and that patience with each other.
Powerful. I'm going to say this one comment and I'm going to let the pastor close us out. Jesus says that, you know, Mary and his brother comes to him in Matthew's, and he's in a synagogue, he's preaching, and he says to him, they say, hey, your mother and brother's here. And Jesus says, who is my mother and brother? And then he says to the disciples, those are my brothers, right? And then he says that my brothers and sisters, or my family, is those that do the will of my Father. So we are all part of a huge blended family in the body of Christ. And so that's my last comment. Pastor, take us out.
Good deal. Well, that were 6 points that we had discussed as it relates to things that you can do to make a blended family work better. Now, is it an absolute? There are no absolutes. as it relates to this. It's not a hard science. It's not math. You're dealing with people. However, we believe that these 6 things that I'm about to give you, and some of them we've already talked about, the majority of them we've already talked about, can help in that process. The first thing is giving it time, not putting a clock on it. Well, if you don't get this together in the next 6 months, then I'm out of here. Well, they probably not, just because you said that.
Right.
Okay. So give things time. Also, have the appropriate communication level with the other parent, the other biological parent. Making sure that the right lines are there. Making sure that the relationship is, if nothing else, cordial. You ain't got to be best friends. You ain't got to get along, but you shouldn't be fighting all the time either. So figuring out that process. Providing some structure for the family. And the new family is in terms of how we're going to interact with one another, what direction we're going to go, how we're all going to start pulling in the same way, so that we can get to the goal that we're trying to get to. Christ said it best: "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Fourth thing, my wife kind of alluded to this when she said, "Let people be themselves." Flexibility is key. The ability, you can't be so rigid in a family. You can bend but don't break. And you've got to be malleable enough as it relates to people's different proclivities and idiosyncrasies and the way people operate and conduct themselves, the way they think. They think differently.
Yeah.
They think differently, so you got to be flexible. You also talked about communication. One of the things we said was to open all the lines of communication. Open them all, okay? However it is that you can best get across the truth in a situation, use that, whatever that is. Nothing is off limits as it relates to how you guys communicate, though, with each other. You have to figure out what works for this individual to understand it. And the 6th and final thing that I thought was the most important is to start new traditions.
Yeah, I like that.
Start new traditions, things that are indicative of this unit. So I know that, well, when I was with, my father do it this way. Well, that's cool. You and your daddy go do it that way. But me and you, we gonna do it this way, okay? And give that child, give that new unit opportunity to thrive with these new traditions. Come together, make them up together. Have fun with it together. Make it a game. That way you have your own thing to bond around.
Powerful words. Everybody, I've really enjoyed our time here together for After Church Sessions, Blended Families. I want you out there to make comments, like this video, share with us what you thought about this session, and give us an opportunity to understand your feedback and to know what you feel about this is our session number 2 After Church Sessions, and we don't have our third amigo here today, Pastor Adams, but I had such tremendous feelings. I'm extremely excited about what was shared here today, and so grateful for all of you being vulnerable, having the courage to cross that line and say, hey, this is something that's going to help blended families across the world. God bless you, each of you.